Going. All right.
Excuse me.
Well, hey, good afternoon or good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm really delighted to have the entire ensemble cast of this wonderful new anthology, Hotel California, with us. And editor Don Bruns is going to be sort of moderating the discussion, but I might jump in from time to time with some questions, and I'm sure Barbara will as well. So let me just, actually, I'll have you go ahead and introduce the contributors here. But I just want to say that here's, again, a copy of the cover. And Don was just pointing out the very cool, the boards here have a reproduction of a vinyl album as well. And those of you watching, if you have questions for our cast here, go ahead and send them in, and I'll be happy to I'm just going to stay on screen and irritate you guys. But if you have questions, I'll be happy to forward them along whenever the right moment is. And Barbara, over to you.
No, thank you very much. Well, with that, I'm going to just disappear from the screen here in a minute. But I did want to add that our autographed copies, of which we've sold out, but we have more coming, are signed by all the contributors. So that's really cool. You have a chance to get 8 signatures in a single volume. Wonderful. I haven't seen Don Bruns for a very long time, but I'm happy to have him back on screen. And I'm sure he's going to tell you the spine of this collection, what it is that brought everything together and what the contributions are. And I will mention that Andrew, who I still think of as Andrew Grant, but is actually now Andrew Child, has a new Jack Reacher story in here, which I'm sure you all will mention. And beyond that, I'm going to turn this over to Patrick and say thanks very much for joining us.
All right, great. Well, just as a kind of an introduction, I mean, this book, when I was thinking about these classic albums that are, just chock full of story songs, that just beg for, it's such an inspired idea for an anthology. Don, each of the stories, of course, is based around a different song on this album. Can you talk a little bit about, was it your concept that you came up with, or?
All my idea. I'm the brilliant person. No, that's not true. Actually, I got a call from Josh Prattner out in Nebraska. Somebody's a professor, and he said, I'm doing a Jimmy Buffett story, and it's called The Great Filling Station Holdup. And what I want to do is get a number of authors who are Buffett fans to take one song from each one of his albums. Well, I chose Cheeseburger in Paradise, and I did a 5,000-word short. And I called Julie Gwynn, my agent. In fact, 3 of us have Julie as an agent in this group. And I told her, and she said, oh, I wish we'd thought of that. And I said, Julie, there's 1 million albums out there that are huge. And she said, what would you do? And I said, well, I don't know, off the cuff, Hotel California. And we take the titles and we offer them to authors that I know. And she said, who would write them? And I said, okay. So the first person I got a hold of was Andrew. And I thought, I could turn down on this one. That's okay. I mean, that's really reaching. And he said, I want to do it. And I'm going, oh my God. I called Julie back. I said, we got a book. I'm going to get, and I got Heather, and I got John Gilstrap, who's with us, Reed. I got Amanda Flower, Jennifer Thornbush, and Rick. And it just fell together. Nobody said no. Within a week, I called her with the entire list of authors doing stories based on the titles from Hotel California. Within a week, she called me back and said, Blackstone wants it. What's next? Well, okay. So then we decided we would do Thriller, which comes out next year. And then we sold Back in Black, which is AC/DC, for 2024. So that's, in a nutshell, that's how it came about.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, why don't you go ahead and, you started to kind of introduce your authors, and I don't know how you'd like to lead the discussion. I mean, you could all talk a little bit about your.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, I'd like to give. I think we've got an hour, so I'd like to give 4 or 5 minutes to each one of them, and a back and forth. And if you have anything you want to add, Patrick, is great. And if Barbara, anybody wants to jump in, but I go back to 25 years ago, and I got into this business. And one of the first people I met was a guy that I'd already read one of his books, and it was Reed Farrell Coleman. And my attorney and I and our wives were at this conference. I don't think I had a book out at that point. I think it was ready to release. And saw Reed at a panel discussion, and then went up for a signing. And Reed, you're there, right?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I wasn't sure.
I know you're not used to me being quiet for more than 2 minutes.
That's what I was going to say. Reed could carry this whole thing. Reed, has recently done the Jesse Stone series. He's done so many books and such a great writer. But the first book that I had read and shared with my attorney, who was a big reader of mysteries, was Walking the Perfect Square. And we just were mesmerized. And it was like a book club. Don and I kept talking about how great this book was. And then there was Reed. Reed, what is your motivation? I mean, what motivates you to write? You write a variety of series, but what is it that really gets you going?
Poverty.
Tell the people what you did before.
Oh, I had a million jobs.
But the delivery thing,
I worked at I worked at the cargo area at Kennedy Airport for 5 years. So if you've ever seen Goodfellas, those are the guys I worked with. And you could see the Lufthansa warehouse out my office window. They were all the people I worked with were named Vinny. And we had a saying at the airport: if it fell off the truck on Tuesday, we were wearing it or selling it by Thursday. And then I was a home heating oil delivery man. I drove a truck for several years. So
is that Tony?
I had no talent. What'd you say, Patrick?
Is that where Tony Spinoza comes from?
Yes, that's where Tony Spinoza comes from. I like to say I've written 32 novels, and I will get it right eventually.
Well, you're fabulous, and you just jumped on this, but you've done a number of anthologies. I know you and I have been in a couple short story books. How do you feel between short stories and long form? What's your feeling?
Well, when I taught at Hofstra University, I used to tell my students that short stories are about one thing. They're like a road flare. It's about one thing or one character. And novels are like the midnight sky. They're about 1,000 things. They can be about 1,000 things. And I always find that writing short stories hones my craft. I love doing short stories because I always feel I'm a better writer. The public may disagree, but I always feel that I'm a better writer after I've written a short story than I was before I wrote that short story.
That's interesting. That's good. I like that. I always look at when my father got True magazine, Argosy magazine, Playboy magazine. I used to find that under the driver's seat on his car. But anyway, it was one of those things where the short story was the big deal. I mean, we have a friend on John Jakes who writes the historic novels. John started doing short. John McDonald from Sarasota, where I live, was short story. Ray Bradbury started short story. And then TV kind of came in, and an hour show was a short story. So I kind of think that killed that big deal with that. Life magazine, my God, they started with Hemingway did The Old Man in Life magazine. So it was a short, but I think it's coming back. And I've read some anthologies. Obviously, you're in some of them with me, and you write you're a tight writer.
I thought you just called me a typewriter.
No, you're a tight writer. You're able to really compress. But when you're writing a novel, I noticed, that your stuff, you don't have a problem with the sag in the middle, which so many people do.
The muddy middle. If people only knew what a struggle that was, and all the people here know what the middle 100 pages in a 300-page book can be like.
Yeah, Heather, can I go to you? You and I are almost as old friends as, not old friends, we go back as far as Reed. I'm sorry, I don't want to do this.
We're young friends, right?
We're young friends. But, we had a marketing meeting a couple months ago, and Heather said, Don and I go back as far as forever. And it's true. I have loved your passion for New Orleans, but you wrote romance, you wrote mysteries. But how many books have you written? You know?
I don't. I seriously don't know.
About how many? Let's give 200.
Close to 200, yeah.
All right. That's huge. I mean, that's
the
huge.
same reason Reed mentioned. I have 5 children, desperation. Yeah.
But you know what I always find amusing about you? People say, how many books? I said, the lady puts out 4 or 5 books a year. They're on the New York Times. And they said, where does she find the time? I said, I really don't know, because she's at every conference. She sponsors conferences. She is on this call right now. You should be writing, lady, shouldn't you?
Actually, I'm at the Hard Rock Hotel. My daughter's birthday's tomorrow, so
Well, congratulations. Okay, let's talk about the story you did for us was about New Orleans, which you are passionate about. You and I have been to many conferences that you've sponsored there. Tell me what you're passionate about in New Orleans.
I think there's just something about it's funny because the first time, I'm not from New Orleans, I'm from Miami. And really from Miami.
You live in Miami.
Yeah, and I still live in Miami, but I fell in love with New Orleans when I was about 5 years old. Seriously, too many people have the concept that your father was walking you down Bourbon Street when you were 5, and it's kind of like, no. It has, this didn't exist back then, but New Orleans has a world-class World War II museum. Besides that, it's got a phenomenal zoo where any of us old enough to remember Cat People was featured in that movie. And I think the cemeteries are just incredibly atmospheric and lead to so much. And the museums on Jackson Square, they're a phenomenal aquarium. It's just, it offers so much. Because even now, people who are not familiar with it will say something to me about, you're bringing your nephews, your grandchildren to New Orleans. And it's kind of like, guess what? People actually procreate there too. They have everything else.
Well, Heather's story involves a cemetery, and you are so atmospheric. Do you draw on anything? I mean, what brings that kind of woo-woo effect to your writing? What do you think?
I think it's because my mother was born in Dublin, and I grew up with a pretty crazy Irish family. And I had a great grandmother who convinced me that there were leprechauns, and if we weren't behaving, the banshees be getting us in the outhouse.
Ooh.
So we were pretty old before we figured out we didn't even have an outhouse. So we're not sure the banshees were going to get us. But she was very good. We fell for it all the time. But they were just, seriously, I think the Irish are some of the most amazing storytellers in the world. And she entertained us. And I don't know, I find, again, New Orleans especially, there's just something, they call them cities of the dead. So there's just something very special, unique, and atmospheric.
Who's the actor who just bought a plot next to Marie Laveau?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, he's
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage.
No, wasn't Nicolas Cage?
Thank you, Reed.
He owned one of the haunted houses there for a while, the LaLaurie house. He had it for a while. I don't think he does now, though.
Well, Heather did Pretty Maids All in a Row, which is one of the titles. And I failed to say that Reed did Victim of Love. Because we have limited time, let me move to the next guy. Actually, I met him almost at the same time I met Reed, John Gilstrap. John, are you there?
I am here.
Okay. John is a partner of mine in a writer's workshop that we did for 5 years before COVID. And we did 3 of them in Sarasota, 2 of them in Las Vegas. And we invited, not an exclusive, but a group of writers that we knew and felt comfortable with. And we had some serious conversations about, the fate of the business, how things were going. And it's been a really nice thing. And I hope we'll revive that again. John, you write Jonathan Grave thriller series. I got to tell you, and to take a little detour, my favorite book you did, and you've done some really great books. You're a hell of a writer. I loved the Delta Force Rescue book that you did, 6 Minutes to Freedom. I thought that was just, I mean, it was riveting. And I was just mesmerized because you went out of fiction and you did a true story. And somebody said to me today, I only read nonfiction. And I said, pretend it really happened. And then you could read my book, and that's kind of what you did. You wrote it almost as a fiction novel.
Well, 6 Minutes to Freedom, and thank you very much. It's my only nonfiction book, and I mean that literally. It's really hard to do nonfiction, where everything has to be true. I found that the narrative arc, the story is 6 Minutes to Freedom is about the capture and torture and rescue of a fellow named Kurt Muse in Panama in 1989 during the Noriega years. And he and some Rotarian buddies actually ran a radio station, an illicit radio station with Radio Shack equipment against Noriega, and became persona non grata, public enemy number one. And on the day that Kurt was arrested, because he was betrayed by one of his co-conspirators, the wife of one of his co-conspirators, actually, his children, who were 15 and 12, had to flee Panama on their own as the PDF were trying to capture them and use them. And then he was rescued by Delta Force. And the opening shots of the invasion of Panama and Operation Just Cause.
But it was a perfect book for you because you write that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah, it had family. It had all of the elements. And I was shocked when I first heard his story. I was shocked that it hadn't been written already. So yeah, well, thank you very much. And that, of course, the reason.
No, you chose Wasted Time, which is one of the Eagles' songs on this book. And I thought you just did a marvelous job in taking a title that, could have been anything and what you did with it. You want to explain that?
Well, Wasted Time it's actually, truth be told, is one of the songs I don't think I had heard off of the album. It was not one of the big sellers. And Wasted Time, the story itself represents a recurring nightmare that I've had for years, where actually it's my mother, who's not with us anymore, and she was a lovely lady, where she has killed somebody and buried them in the basement, and I have to help her dispose of the body. That's the nightmare. Welcome to the world of a thriller writer. And so the Wasted Time, it's kind of a theme within the story. And I have not had the nightmare since I wrote the story.
You get rid of it. See, that's what we do. We get rid of our demons. And that's how we.
I was afraid to read John's story because I thought it was about my career.
That's a good thought. A good thought. Good thought. I want to move on, and we're going to leave room for discussion between us. But I just want to get everybody a little shot. Andrew, you and I have met, and whether or not you remember that or not, I was in 4 or 5 years ago, I was in an auditorium, and you and Tasha and Lee were all up there, and they were talking. I said, Andrew, give us your background. And you smiled like, thank God somebody's paying attention to me. Okay. But no, man, your brother has been to a lot of us. I mean, I know Reed's very close to him, and I came up with Lee through the time when he had his first 2 novels out, and I was coming up. He's been a great friend, a great mentor. He blurbed to him my books, so I can't, say anything bad about it. When he said to me, look, I'm turning it over to Andrew, and I talked to you, and you said, yes, of course, I'll do that. You don't know. I mean, you can't imagine the thrill that I got out of that, because we're going to get an original Jack Reacher. And what I said at the beginning of this conversation, I called Julie and I said, guess what? We're going to sell this. I mean, we've got Andrew writing this story. I read a lot of your books before Reacher, and you're a master of plotting. You know, that's a lot of trouble with a lot of writers. Some of us here, you know, we struggle with that. And you seem to be able to move the plotting where it doesn't make any sense, and all of a sudden, wham, it all comes together. And I love what your twists and turns are. And so I ask you to do, you know, because of everything that's happening with you, New Kid in Town. I thought that was perfect. And you just nailed that. You want to talk about that process?
Yeah, well, thank you, Don, and thank you for those kind words. I'm kind of blushing a little bit here, so thank you for saying those things. But yeah, you know, I think when you called me about it, it was exactly the right time, because I was going through this transitional process of switching from writing on my own to writing with my brother, which was, you know, something neither of us had ever done before. You know, I'm sure Reed will back me up when I say, you know, neither of us are really known for playing well with others. So it was quite something for us to have to, you know, suddenly figure out a way of working together, and actually figure out two ways of working together, because the pandemic hit. So everything we'd done, you know, sitting together across a table wound up being done remotely. So it was, you know, the idea of being the new kid in town was perfect, really, in terms of what was happening in my life. And I want to go back to something that Patrick said at the very beginning, you know, because the thing that really intrigued me about this is Patrick said, he talked about the story songs. And, you know, my whole life, I was never particularly bothered about being an author, but I always wanted to tell stories. My whole life has been about, I absorb stories, I consume stories, and I love telling stories, and I love different ways of telling them. You know, most of the ways of telling stories I could never in a million years do. And one of the ones I think is the coolest and the best is the way that the really good bands can tell a phenomenal story in 3 or 4 minutes. You know, the economy, the precision is just fascinating to me. So the idea of latching onto a story that was told through a song and finding the not an exact equivalent, but, you know, riffing off that and finding something that you could tell as a short story was fascinating to me. And again, as Reed said, I mean, I just think writing a short story is just so difficult. It's so much harder than writing a novel, I think, because you've got to focus exactly on the one thing you're doing. You can't meander along and find the purpose. You can't find the core of the story. You have to be right out there. It's a bit like a chef. You know, you don't have a 14-course tasting menu to get the point across. You've got to do it in a sandwich. You know, it's much harder, I think. So the idea that, you know, you're in a new situation yourself. There's this medium that you're fascinated in, you know, storytelling as a song and then as on the page, and something that, you know, will test you as an author. To me, it was an irresistible combination. And, you know, getting to work with all of you other guys on the screen tonight has been an absolute pleasure.
Who wrote First Blood? David
Morrell.
Morrell. I called Morrell and I said, "You want to do this?" And he said, "I would love to. It takes me 3 times as long to write a short story as it does a novel." And I said, "Okay, you know, I get it." So, but he's the only person to turn me down, and he had a really good, solid reason. I've got to ask you, Andrew, what the hell is it with the British accent? I mean, why is it so sexy and so? I mean, that's the only reason we ask you to be in this book, because of the British accent. You know, I love that.
Well, why do you think I left Britain? It doesn't work there.
It works here, right? Yeah. Witness Prince Harry, you know, so, okay. No, but we're so happy. And I will say that to all of you. I was blown away by everybody said, yeah. And what and I've done a couple essays and a couple interviews that have been out, Blackstone set up some of them. I met a lot of you at a hotel bar. So, you know, it was like a hotel was a good way to start this whole thing. I mean, you know, we sat around and had drinks, and we've done that. I want to move on to Rick. And Rick, give me your pronunciation. I mean, I'm never quite sure if I'm getting that right. Your last name?
Bleiweiss.
Bleiweiss. And that's exactly what it looks like, but it's got a lot of letters in it.
It does.
Rick and I met each other on a boat, a cruise ship to the Bahamas about 4 years ago. And we sat down and found out that we'd both been, and he's been a much bigger player. Rick was a road musician. He played drums, right? Am I right?
No, guitar and bass.
Then I'm wrong. It was guitar and bass. And Rick has played with a number of bands, done a lot of road work, and I had done 4 years on the road. And we had some really interesting conversations after we figured out that we had a likeness there. You have worked as a producer, a musician, with some serious players. You got your book out, which is getting great reviews. It's with the Barbershop Detectives. And I am so pleased that you came on board because I read that book and I was just astounded. I know Heather has blurbed it and she's a big fan. But, you know, at our age, when we start a new career, then you go, all right, you know, I hope this takes off. And yours apparently is doing very well. Talk about the process. Talk about mixing the music with the writing.
Well, actually, I've written in some way, shape, or form my whole life. I mean, you know, I started off by writing lyrics to songs, which is writing, but of a different nature. And then I started writing nonfiction, but it was mostly newspaper and magazine columns and articles. But I was doing that all at the same time that I was a working musician and producing records and then a record company executive. And I don't know, I've just always had a creative bent in one direction or another. And then later in life, I joined a writing group when I moved from New York to Oregon, and they got me into writing, and the rest, as they say, is history. And that happened when I was in my 60s. My first book came out when I was in my late 70s, which I still am. And I'm just kind of like going, wow, that's cool.
Well, talk about some of the bands you've worked with, some of the music you've done. I mean, that's because we are a music mystery series. So tell me.
Well, I will tell you, I have never worked with the Eagles. So let's start there. But
that's good, because if they knew you were doing this, maybe they would sue us, and we don't want to.
You never know. Well, actually, I did a lot of work with the Backstreet Boys, with Britney Spears, with Melissa Etheridge, with U2, Whitney Houston, Pink, Alicia Keys. I mean, it's really a long list. I signed Richie Havens. I did the first music video ever with him.
That's huge.
I worked with Bowie. I don't know. I had a lot of fun. You know, I mean, what can I say other than the Grammy nomination I got actually was for a spoken word record that I did with Steve Allen and Jane Meadows. If anybody on this remembers them.
Well, if you're 90, you would remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I got beaten out by Shari Lewis and her puppet Lamb Chop.
And Lamb Chop.
So, I have some great memories of the music industry.
Didn't Steve Allen write some mystery novels? I seem to remember.
Excuse me?
Steve Allen, I think he wrote some mystery novels.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he did. Actually, the album that I did with him was back in the very, very, very earliest days of home computers. And the album was called Everything You Wanted to Know About Home Computers, but Didn't Know Who to Ask. And we taught people how to use home computers back when it was like Texas Instruments and Commodore.
Okay, I want to go, because I have the two women in our book. I have never met.
There are three.
Excuse me.
Oh, that's true. No, that's true. That's true. Heather. I think of Heather as this legend, and I just say, my God, I had this.
Oh God.
That's
Save,
embarrassing.
Good save.
Heather,
You're not going to.
Heather, I am very no. But we got three women. But you know, the one I have never talked to, I don't think. I've talked to Jennifer several times online and in Zoom, but never Amanda. So Amanda comes on in this video that Blackstone did for us, and you've all apparently seen it. And it's this little girl and she's got a children's story, an Amish mystery. She's nice, she's quiet. All of a sudden, I read this story and she explodes. And I don't know how you change voices from that quiet, all of a sudden you're just out there. And the story she did is really good. And Amanda, which do you prefer? Or do you agree with me that you can change your voice?
I guess
See what I mean? See what I mean about the voice?
I guess in this case, I did change my voice. So when I was asked to write a story for this anthology, I was like, are you sure? Because I am known for cozies and Amish cozies and books with cats on the covers and, you know, come out mass market paperback right away. So I was very surprised. And then they, Don or Julie, the agent, told me who the contributors were. And I was like, oh my golly, like, I can't write about a cat. Like, this is going to be some trouble. So I just, it gave me an opportunity to stretch myself, and I knew I needed to write something a little bit more hard hitting, but I also wanted to write something that, you know, wasn't too gory or scary, because that's not what my fan base is looking for. So it's more of like a traditional private eye, but the protagonist, we don't know really much about her, and there's hints to something in her past, but it's a short story, so we never really learn too much about her. But we do find out about this mystery happening on Put-in-Bay, and I live in Ohio, and I said it in Put-in-Bay because, you know, it's a big party island, or you may not know, in Ohio it's known for being a big party island.
It's the Key West of the North.
It's the Key West of the North, and they celebrate St. Patrick's Day every weekend, just to drink like green beer and act crazy. And there's tiki bars and just lots of crazy stuff that happens up there. So I was like, well, this is a perfect place for someone to disappear.
Well, we are so happy to have you in the book.
Thank you.
And I really, I mean, I wasn't trying to be funny about it. I mean, you literally come off, you know, as this, you know, you're going to be this cozy writer, and all of a sudden you really wrote what I consider to be one of the huge stories in there. And by the way, some people have chimed in late. This is Hotel California. It's 8 stories by 8 award-winning authors who have taken a title from the book and written a story. Legally, we can do that. We can take the title. What we can't do is write a story about the actual theme of the song. But I want to show you, I mean, you know, Reed sent a note out the other day, and I had gone to Blackstone a number of times and said, you guys are outdoing yourselves. That, you just saw the cover. Reed said, I've never had an anthology that has done so much to promote it. Look at the cover after you take the dust jacket off. It's a 33 1/3 RPM record. I mean, it is amazing. It gets better if you take the damn cover off of it. And then it even goes on the back. There's the rest of the record. I can't believe what these people have done. We are so, Patrick, we are so, not Patrick, who's on from Blackstone at this moment?
Me.
Anyway. Well, Rick, tell everybody.
Tell everybody. My publisher.
We are ecstatic. And then Andrew wrote and said, I agree with Reed 100%. This is fabulous what you guys are doing. So I can't tell you enough. And we've had a good run for 3 days. We actually got down to number 4 on mystery anthologies. The last time I looked, it was up to 90. So we got to sell more books, guys, to get it back down. Okay, the last person we're going to talk to, and then we will have some time, I think, to just have a general discussion. Jennifer Thornbush. Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here. Hi.
Good, you stuck around. Okay.
I did.
Look at the background.
I know.
You've done
Is it too subtle? Is it too subtle?
Jennifer, I gotta tell you this story. Jennifer is a forensic specialist. That's what she does for a living, or she did. I'm not sure if she still does that. But anyway, and I don't want to mention a publisher, but a publisher that actually bought one of her books, Blackstone, said your facts are wrong. And she said, wait a minute.
Wait.
That's my profession. I know what the hell I'm doing. And they said, now you got to change this. And she said, no. And she pointed out to where she was exactly right. So Jennifer, you
I did
are
it gracefully, I promise.
Thanks for that story,
because
Don.
they're publishing your
Hey,
book.
and I helped yours too.
I will tell you, I was asked by our agent to blurb one of her books, Hole in the Woods. And because people have been so gracious to me, and Andrew, your brother, example, I mean, guys who have no business reading my stuff and blurbing it, they do it. This community, this mystery community, as you all know, but I'm telling the people who are looking in, is very giving and very just phenomenal as far as their interest in each other and sharing. And so I said, yeah, I'll read it. It was amazing. It was one of the most intricate books I've ever read. The Hole in the Woods is the name. And if you get a chance, read it. It is just fabulous. And so I blurbed it. And when Julie said to me, would you have Jennifer get in on Hotel California? I said, of course, and she wrote the title, Hotel California. Talk about that process.
Thank you, Don. I'm only here because of Don, because he was so gracious enough to actually read my book. And I know it's so hard to get people to do that because it's like homework. It's like, can I give you, 300 pages of homework tonight? So thank you for doing that. Still, I'm grateful. So I was really grateful to be asked into this project. And when Don said, pick a song from the album, I said, well, is Hotel California chosen? And I was surprised that it had not been chosen. So I'm like, I want that one. And so at the time I'd been living in Los Angeles for 14 years. And I just I felt that song. That was just, I felt like my life had been that song for 14 years. And so I was so excited to do it. And I remember when I first started writing it, because I was like, I'm a screenwriter that's the first of my storytelling. I came in as a screenwriter and then also added novels about 8 years ago. And I'm like, I've never written a short story. I don't know how to do this. So I guess I'll just use Save the Cat model and see what happens. But I was starting to think about, well, what do I write about? And what is this song speaking to me? And to me, the Hotel California is the Hearst Castle. That's just always what went into my mind. And if you've ever been to Cambria or the Hearst Castle, it's kind of this weird, beautiful, spooky phenomena. And it was September of 2020.
You didn't write about the zebras?
I know all the zoos. And plus I think I read that Hearst used to have a dachshund farm. So I've always had dachshunds, and I think he had 600 dachshunds.
Oh my God.
I know. I was like, oh man, he's my hero. Anyway, so I was starting to think about and the deadline was looming and I had to figure out what to write. And end of September, my husband and I took a drive up Highway 1, end of September of 2020. So remember, full on COVID, everything's closed. Hearst Castle, literally everything. And we're driving up Highway 1, which is one of the most beautiful drives in our country. And there's nobody on the road. Talk about a haunting experience. I've been on that highway many times, all the way up to Monterey and San Francisco, and I've never seen it with nobody on the road. And I just started that's how it all kind of came together for me. I started that song and thinking about what's going on in society and how, compared to when they wrote it, and what sort of just all this stuff was looming as the ocean waves, and there's nobody around him. It was a very surreal world. And I feel like that song is very surreal. And anyway, so that's kind of how it all initiated. And then this social media star popped into my head, and I got to thinking about how we're so obsessed with self-adoration.
You've got an influencer.
Yes, right? She's an influencer. And how that's what people strive for, a lot of people strive for today, like just self-adoration, and how that's the thing, that's the beast that kills, I think. And all that's behind that. So anyway, that was the
maybe all of us writers are in it for self-adoration. You know, maybe we're all trying to be influencers in other ways.
Maybe so. Maybe
Well,
so.
hey, Don, do you mind if I jump in and ask a couple of questions? So
please
yeah,
do.
Just to give the people that are watching an idea of what we can expect with the stories in this book, one of the things that you mentioned really caught my attention, which was I was going to ask about, you know, the rights to the book. How do you get the rights? And how, all of you who've contributed, how did you go about adapting each of these songs? And what you said was, well, we can't really have them do a direct adaptation of the song. All you have to work with is the title. Is that correct?
Yes, but it turns out that the Eagles are going to sue individually every one of these people. And so, no, it's not true. It's not true. No, my understanding from Blackstone's legal, and I have heard this from when I was with St. Martin's and other publishers, that titles you can use.
Yeah.
Ideas, thoughts, or using the Eagles in a marketing way. If we were doing print, saying based on the Eagles, they could object to that and stop that. But we're not doing that. Blackstone's been very careful, as far as they know, to protect ourselves from anything like that. So. Right.
Well, it's funny because an album like Hotel California, like I was saying at the beginning, it really captures an era and a mood in time. I think of, that kind of the beginning of that whole sort of stoned out yacht rock era in California music, that kind of went through the entire 70s. But, these story songs, like I was saying, Springsteen is a classic example of somebody who writes story songs. Or, I love Tom Waits, and I think you could do a Tom Waits anthology of stories very easily. But one of the things about that's so kind of neat, I was thinking about the analogy between an old vinyl LP and an anthology, is that it's very important when you, I would assume, with records, you remember how often one side one would have a very different vibe from side two. And when you're, I've done a couple of anthologies, but creating a narrative with these individual pieces and getting the order right of the stories is very important, because you're taking the reader on this journey, and I think it's really, really awesome that you have a variety of different voices in the book. I don't know, just maybe briefly, each of you could just say a few words about your particular story, how you took the song title. And, Jennifer just gave a wonderful description of how she ran with it and took it in a completely different direction. But, maybe, and you included, Don, can tell us a little bit about the story and how you adapted the title.
Well, I'll volunteer to go first. One of the great things I think about Don's editing was his lack of editing. Is we were given great freedom to go where we wanted to go with the stories. So, I'm not known as a science fiction or a woo-woo writer. And I decided, Victim of Love, I took the song title very literally. And there are people in the story who are victims of love.
Yes, they are.
Because the character, the protagonist is named Love. So, I took it in a place I don't usually go, writing police procedurals and detective fiction. So it was great because I had the freedom to go there. So tip of the hat to Don for that.
And they're not all set in California, right? They're set all over the place. Okay.
No.
Oh, well, Heather's got New Orleans. She's doing a grave. She's doing one of the cemeteries. So,
well, I think that was a lot of it right after Katrina, as you know, because you've been there. We did something called Writers for New Orleans, and it was completely at cost just to get people to come back into the city. And it was still so soon after Katrina that the Catholic Church actually owns most of the major cemeteries in New Orleans, and then the older ones. This particular one, they'd forgotten to close the gates at night, and we had a tour guide who decided we had to go in at night, and there were shadows falling, and I actually thought I was seeing bodies lined up on the graves, which freaked me out a little bit. I didn't like scream and run out or anything, but I got real close to other people, so the living ones, you know, to make sure that nothing was going to happen. But as soon as we got the title, I fell in love with it. And then I also fell in love with the whole concept because we also, a group of us, including David Morrell and many other people at various times, we have something called the Slush Pile Players in the Slush Pile Band. And Don has joined in several times because my background was musical theater. So the concept of doing something connected with music was like, oh my God, that's so cool, Don, I love it. So, but definitely the cemetery had a lot to do with my story, my inspiration.
You know, one of the editors at Blackstone wrote back on Heather's story and said, we need a series based on this story. They said, this is fabulous. I mean, they gushed over your stories, but they said Heather needs to have a whole series based on her story. So I was excited about that.
How about you, Don? What about your story? What did you do?
I did Life in the Fast Lane because it was the last one. And since in my life, I've never lived in well, it's not true. I probably did sometimes, but the Life in the Fast Lane. And obviously the lyrics read about a guy and a girl who do drugs and burnout. And I'm not going to go there. So I have a hitman who is in a little town of Georgia where he's hired to kill a dirt track racer who's the hero of the town because the only thing in that town is the dirt track. And everybody on Saturday and Friday nights go to this race. And so I based it on, I don't think any of us, a little bit of Jennifer was Hotel California. She uses some of the lyrics, but most of us took the title and said, great, I can make this anything I want to. It doesn't have to be the song and the story of the song. So that like Reed said, it was the freedom to take a title that you're kind of given and say, what could I do with this that doesn't have anything to do with the song? So that's what I did.
How about you, Amanda? Not to take over the discussion, but I'm going to take it over. Amanda, how about you?
Well, when I got I don't even remember the titles that I chose from, but I chose Try and Love Again, which a song I had never heard before, but my husband has a recording studio. So I remember taking the song options to him and I was like, which of these do you think I could write a story about? Which, when I was telling him the concept, he kind of had the same reaction Don did, like, what? You're gonna write in a thriller anthology? So he suggested that one and he played it for me. And from there I was like, well, this is a story about a lost love, but I didn't want it to be schmaltzy. That was really important to me. And I wanted it, and I love cold case stories. So I was like, well, this is a great opportunity. Plus it'll be a lot easier for me to have the person have died a while ago. So I don't have to set up the scene of finding a body and waste words on that for such a short word count. And then it really came down, the most important thing for me was the setting of Put-in-Bay, this island, because it's such a unique place. Not only is there, this party scene, but there's also the Perry Monument, which is part of the National Park Service there. And it's to the War of 1812, the Battle of Lake Erie. So there's this kind of weird national park part and then a party island at the same time. So I wanted to highlight the area and how unique it was, and how the people that live there year round, like my protagonists, are very unique people, because it's a really rough place to live in the winter time. Like Lake Erie, it's 40 miles from Canada, and gets all the terrible weather you can imagine the Great Lakes get. So
well, people drive over that lake in the winter.
Yeah, it freezes over.
Don, is it true that you were at that battle?
Yes, yes. Come on, we're all of a certain age, but no, not that far back. Rick, you did Last Resort. What did you think about when you got that title?
I actually thought about a resort that I stayed at in Kihei on Maui a few years ago, and it was the last resort at the end of South Kihei Road. And so I just thought that would make a really cool setting. And so I started it in New York with a hitman who has a hit put on his life, and he escapes to Maui, and it becomes a cat and mouse game between him and the hit person sent to finish him off.
Great idea. Great idea. I love the concept. It was great.
Thanks.
Patrick, I don't mean to step in, but let me say again, I want to make sure that the people who are watching this, and my understanding is that it goes on in perpetuity. It's Hotel California, 8 really talented authors who have put together stories based on the title of each song. And as John Gilstrap, my good friend, says, Wasted Time, which is his title, pretty much sums up a lot of the authors, just sitting around saying, oh my God, what am I doing here? So I think it's fun that everybody took this as a project. And I will tell you that next year we're doing, with Blackstone, we're doing Thriller. And we've got all the stories in. Some of you are included. Some of you are going to come back in 2024 with another series. But it is just gratifying to me. And I can't thank you enough for jumping in on this, because we all know, I can't think who said it. It might have been Reed. Somebody said in past conversations, we all know that anthologies are not #1 bestsellers. We know that. It's a fun project. It can pay, but it's not huge. But you guys jumped in, and I owe it a lot to hanging out in hotel bars for 25 years and meeting Reed Coleman and Heather and Gilstrap and people. We hung out and we got to be friends. And you only see some of these friends, at conferences. We're all looking forward to BoucherCon, and a lot of us will be there. And but it is such a thrill to sit down and talk to people who go through the same thing you're going through. The saggy middle, the opening, the end, the editors, the publishers, and to sit down and just really air it out. And that's where this all comes from, are people who are passionate about this business. And I hope those of you who are watching are going to look at Hotel California and give it a shot, because we got some fabulous authors.
Patrick, do we have any questions from the audience?
Well, let's see. There are a few that have come in. Matt would like to know, I think he's responding to a comment that Andrew made earlier about, do you think being a plot-driven writer contributes to it being hard to write a short story?
Well, that's an excellent question, and that's something I'm going to think about, because I wish I could work out why I find it so hard to write a short story. I might be able to get better at doing it, but I'm not so sure about that. I think it's really just the focus and the efficiency. It's just that you've got that much less material to play with, but you're looking for the same, looking for the same bang, but with far less material. But it's a really interesting idea, and I'm certainly going to think about it, because if I could crack that nut, I'd be very happy. But I just want to throw in one quick little personal story, if that's okay, because right at the beginning, Barbara mentioned that at the Poison Pen, you're selling the signed copies that we all did. So I was sitting down to sign my copies, and I thought I'd put some music on. It seemed appropriate, music-based anthology. So I pulled out my phone. I've got maybe 12,500 songs on my phone, and I went to the songs section, and I put it on shuffle. And the song that it played, and I'm not making this up, the first song it played was New Kid in Town.
Are you kidding? That's fabulous.
Wow. Fantastic.
Probably just a good quick question for all of you. I do have some people that are curious about, what some of you are, what your next projects are. So I'm going to start with Brother Reed Coleman. Been waiting for this new book for a long time. What do you got cooking?
I have a new series from Blackstone. The first book will be out in February. It's called Sleepless City, and it features a New York City detective who has an interesting job. The tagline for the book is when citizens are in trouble, they call 911. When the NYPD is in trouble, they call Nick Ryan. So
that's great.
And it's full of dark, of course, I wrote it. So it's full of dark and deep moral questions. So I can't wait. February. And I should get the exact date, which Tuesday in February, I should find out within the next few days.
Are the ARCs out yet?
They aren't, but you'll get one.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, that's really exciting, Reed. Fantastic. How about you, John Gilstrap? What do you got cooking?
Well, Lethal Game, the 14th book in the Jonathan Graves series, just dropped last week, actually last Tuesday. It tells a story. Jonathan Graves is a freelance hostage rescue specialist, and he is on a hunting trip in Montana and finds that he is the game, that he is being hunted by bad guys at the same time that everybody he cares about back in Fisherman's Cove, Virginia, which is the fictional town where he lives, they are all being hunted too. So it's people are trying to make him atone for past sins. And so that came out last week. And then in March, White Smoke will be released. And White Smoke is the third book in my Victoria Emerson series, which is it's post-apocalyptic, but it has no zombies. I have to be careful about using the phrase post-apocalyptic, apparently. But so that one drops in next March.
Awesome. And then Rick, you have the second in your series coming out, right?
Yeah, the second Pignon, Scorpion, and the Barbershop Detectives comes out from Blackstone also next February. So Reed and I will both be pub mates next February, if you will.
Yes.
And it's more of Scorpion and his deputies solving crimes. And in this book, they've got a hot air balloonist, although in that era it was gas-powered balloons, who gets shot by an arrow while he's up in the air, and nobody can figure out how that could have happened. And then somebody dies in the barber chair. So just more fun and mystery.
That's great. Now, Heather, how many new projects do you have in the can, and what's coming next?
Actually, before COVID, I watch a lot of documentaries, and I got it into my head that I wanted to write a 4-book series on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, not knowing that it might be coming. So first one was Danger in Numbers. That came out a year ago, and the one out now is Crimson Summer. And then dropping next Tuesday or the Tuesday after, I can never quite remember. I'm really happy to say is the 37th book in the Crew Hunter series. And it's
37?
A mere 37. Come on.
It's called War of Night. And then I also I started a series with Don Land, and the second book in that series, it's young adult, based on the fact that Bob Gleason at Tour at the time really wanted us all to go to the Goddard Space Flight Center, which turned out to be fascinating. And they were supposed to be doing this whole thing in connection with NASA, but NASA got defunded. But anyway, our second book in the series called Blood Moon will be out in November.
Fantastic. Amanda, what do you have coming out next?
My very next book comes out August 23rd, and it's called Peanut Butter Panic. So I'm back in my wheelhouse writing cozies. It's with Kensington. It's an Amish candy shop. But what I'm really excited about, on September 20th, I'm kind of shifting subgenre again, and my first historical traditional mystery comes out. It's called Because I Could Not Stop for Death, and Emily Dickinson is the protagonist. So this is
Cool.
when Emily was 24, and she went to Washington, D.C. with her father and sister because her father was a member of the House of Representatives. So she gets pulled into solving a murder that involves the Underground Railroad. So it took a lot of research.
Cool.
And I'm just so excited about it. It has a beautiful cover. I haven't gotten ARCs yet, but here's the pretty cover. I love it so much. I put it on my phone. It's my phone. So I actually just heard that I will be back for a virtual event with Poison Pen on September 21st.
Oh, great.
To talk about that book in particular. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I appreciate that.
So could you name the next book, Death Kindly Stopped for Me? Isn't that the next one? Like that?
The next book I'm actually writing right now, and the tentative title is A Fly Buzzed. I heard a fly buzz when I died. So that's also a famous Emily Dickinson line.
Yeah.
Luckily, I hope the series goes on. There's plenty of death and dying lines from her work that I can use. It can go on and on and on. Maybe not as long as Heather's series has, but I would love that.
Are you finding that this experience with this book is there going to be some darker stuff that's going to be sneaking into your writing, even despite?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's because I Could Not Stop for Death, it deals with really serious issues because it's 1855 after the Fugitive Slave Act and the Underground Railroad and things like that. So there's definitely, you can't have a silly pig like my candy shop running through when, you know, you're talking about these really like things that spurred the Civil War and things like that. So it's definitely more serious. But Emily was actually very funny if you read her letters. So there's humor in it too. So I'm just so thrilled, and it's coming out from Berkeley. So, and that's really where I wanted it to land. So I'm so happy.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Don, what do you have going on?
You know, Andrew actually has an October book, don't you, Andrew?
I do, yeah. The next Jack Reacher is out in October, and it's called No Plan B, which
I love that title. No
turned
Plan
out to be
B.
alarmingly topical, but it wasn't intended to be that way, honestly.
Well, it's kind of like wasted time. I mean, I think a lot of writers, I have no plan B. If this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do. I love that title. I love that. I've got a book with Julie right now called Girl at the End of the Lane, which has got a mafia connection. And so I'm looking forward to that. But right now, I'm herding cats for Thriller, which comes out next year. In fact, we did a marketing piece this morning, a film to the sales department of Blackstone. And we're going to do all the titles from Michael Jackson's Thriller album. And then in 2024, we're going to be doing Back in Black, which is AC/DC. And some of you guys are involved in that too. So, I mean, I don't know how much time we have, but I don't want to overdo this. I just want to say thank you, guys. You are fabulous. You're all friends. And I couldn't be happier with this project. And I think you're on the same page. I think you see what Blackstone did, setting up this interview with Poison Pen. And the last anthology, not the last anthology, but I did an anthology called, what the heck was the name of it? We did it with Poison Pen. I can't think of it. It's terrible. It's called, anyway, it was A Merry Band of Murderers.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
We did.
I had the T-shirt.
Yeah.
We had an anthology. And what we
There's a soundtrack too.
What we did, I went to Deaver. I went to a number of, I didn't know Heather at the time. I would have gone to her. But we've got Peter Robinson. We've got just a great lineup. Val McDermott, who were all musicians at one time. And they all wrote a story and then recorded a song that would go with that story. Blackstone, which was only audio, did the CD. The CD was in the back of the book. The stories were fabulous. It was so much fun. And all the songs were really, we had Rupert Holmes, who did the Pina Colada song. He wrote a story for me, and he recorded a song, which was great. And the book just tanked. So, you know, that was the way that was.
Well, Jennifer, I don't want to be remiss. What do you have going on these days? Any new projects or?
Always, yes. So I'm continuing my Coroner's Daughter mystery series with Blackstone. So the third book is in and will be editing and getting that ready for release next year. And then there'll be 2 more following. And then in conjunction with that Lifetime option, the book. So I'm also writing the scripts for Lifetime. So I'm kind of like going between both worlds right now.
You also did work with Bull, and you did consulting, and you did consulting on Hawaii 5-0. And I have to tell you, Jennifer, both those shows got canceled. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
Because
I
they
just
didn't listen to
rewatched
me.
every Hawaii 5-0 episode. I loved them. You were
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's just a fun little side gig.
That's great, though. What a great time.
Hey, Bruns, you're a cheery mofo today. It tanked. The show got canceled.
I know the show got canceled. The book tanked. I'm sorry. But hey, this book is doing well, and we're going to keep promoting. And you guys are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Congrats, everybody.
Thank you, Poison Pen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Poison Pen.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Poison Pen and Blackstone, both of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Blackstone.
Privilege and an honor to
Yes.
have you all here, and congratulations on the book and many happy returns, good book sales. Everybody watching, we're going to be restocked with autographed copies very shortly. So
Patrick, how did they get it?
how do they get it? They can just go to our website, which is store.poisonedpen.com. I put something in the Facebook link too, a link, while we were talking, or you can just give us a call. Yeah, we'd be happy to sell you one.
And Patrick, if people want to access this for whatever reason, because Don will get us canceled, how can they access this, Patrick?
Yeah, it'll live on in perpetuity on our Facebook page and also on YouTube. We stream simultaneously to both platforms. So I can send you all. I don't have everybody's email, but if you're interested, I'd be happy to send you links if you'd like to cross promote them.
That'd be great, Patrick.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well, excellent. Thanks again so much. And thanks everybody watching online for tuning in.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks
Patrick.
to everybody.
All right.
Bye, Barbara.
Bye, Barbara. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to Barbara, but we have an event in another 45 minutes, so she's probably making her way down to the store. So anyway,
I
leave you, Patrick, with the story. You guys were gracious enough to send out.
I was still here. I was trying to catch up on about 75 emails, but this has been true. I know, it's just like I can't possibly keep up. We have Linda Castillo live at the store in just a little bit, so I got to run down there. But I wanted to thank you for doing this really fascinating event. And Patrick should always be your host because he's our music guy.
I wanted to finish with a story that Blackstone sent out a box with the book, with a door hanger that said Hotel California, with a keychain and a T-shirt and everything. And so
Reed's got it.
Yeah, I called Andrew and I said, "Did you get your bling box?" They call it. And Andrew said, "Donnie said, I'm in Tie Siding, Wyoming, and the mailbox is 10 miles down the road. I'll get it this weekend." What? Who has a mailbox 10 miles down the road? So anyway, I thought that was a great story. So
He actually
there you
does.
go, Andrew.
We've been to visit him in Tie Siding, and it is an adventure just to find his wonderful house, let alone the mailbox. But Andrew, we need to talk about October, so I'll be in touch. Good night, everybody. Thank you very
Good
much.
night, Barbara.
Good night. Thank you, Barbara.
Good night.
there.
Night.